I like to start these things with a quote, and today I have stopping advertising to save money, like stopping your watch to save time. Henry Ford. And with me, I have an exciting guest that will cover a lot of that today. So, Byron Alexander is a marketing strategist with over 25 years of experience, spending 18 years with a Fortune 500 company, and now he provides custom brand and marketing strategies that help small businesses reach their target customers with a message that speaks to their wants and needs through his company, Danon Consulting. Byron, how are you today?
Great. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. There's a lot of stuff that I want to cover today because I feel like marketers are the first one to get canned because they just, they try so many things. People get into their strategies and kind of mess it up. And I want to go down to the nitty-gritty and the details of this is what you really have to do as a marketing person. This is what a company needs as a marketing strategy. What
Right.
does that look like? How does that apply? And kind of spending a little bit more time on that. But first, I'd like to start with how did you begin this journey? Where did it start, and how did you get to where we are today?
So it's funny that you started with that because honestly, it started with I was working for Fortune 5 for like 17, 18 years, somewhere around there. And the company I worked for, they were just doing some downsizing. And so I was part of a market research department and they eliminated globally. Like they just said, okay, we're going to just eliminate your team, which was, we had several different locations. So it eliminated that market research team because, they said if we need it, we'd outsource it, just things like that. So like literally I started my journey with Danon Consulting from that experience. So like you said, a lot of times people try to figure out how to cut backs either all of marketing or certain elements of marketing. And so that was actually what kickstarted Denan Consulting.
And you mentioned that when you started your early beginnings, they were in oil and gas, and you
Mhm.
did market research.
Mhm.
How does that look like for a a very niche industry that in some cases has negative connotation, in some cases there is very big misunderstandings. How would someone that is, in that space would do market research and use it properly?
So you have to keep in mind that everyone, every business operates, you have certain strengths and weaknesses, but success comes from understanding who your target market is and how to reach them. And so specifically in oil and gas, there's a lot of competition there. And sometimes some people are focused on price, some people are focused on quality, reliability, just whatever that variable is for that customer, for your ideal customers, you have to understand what that is. And so by understanding that, you have to do your research to say, okay, what motivates? Because sometimes you'll have people that will think, okay, well, if I cut my prices, I'll get more clients or more customers. But their motivation may not be price, it may be quality, or whatever it may be. Um, On-time delivery, quick delivery, whatever it may be. So understanding what's going to motivate your customers' buying decision, you have to do your research to understand that and create a plan that aligns with that. So you will be successful.
Got it. So the market research part comes into whatever your future decisions you want to make.
Mhm.
Before making assumptions, you want to do your research to understand what is the main driver, the motivator for, like you said, for your customers. Is it time? Is
Right.
it quality? Is it deliverability? Is it liability? And
Mhm.
then make those decisions. Do not make
Right.
those decisions without understanding exactly what your target audience is motivated by.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Okay. When you take something like that is very elaborate, and you probably need a
Mhm.
massive team, and
Mhm.
we're a part of a massive team. How do you
Mhm.
take that and distill that and give it to a small business to take it and to apply it?
So even for a small business, same thing applies. So you know, I people will say sometimes I have clients that say, okay, we'll sell to whoever, and like you don't want to go down that rabbit hole either, because now it's like, how do I market? How do you market to everyone? It's like it's not going to work. And so just identifying what you're good at, what's the strengths, like literally, kind of, it's to me, it's a two-step process. What is your organization good at? on what do you do very well and how do you leverage that to and communicate in a way that your potential customers will understand. So once again, if you have like the best product in your small area, you can leverage that, but you also have to communicate how that product or service benefits your customer. So like you can't be I. It's, this is the need we're fulfilling. And so a lot of times I'll focus on flipping it around. So this is your strength, but how do you communicate that strength so that your potential client says, yes, I need that part.
So when you're looking at a small business, it feels like your approach is to understand the strengths of the company, what they're very good at, but also
Mhm,
it's not just identifying what we're good at and going after that target audience. How do
mhm,
you communicate with that target audience? Because everybody will have a different, whether jargons or lingo for each industry. How do you
mhm.
properly communicate what are your strengths and weaknesses to be in alignment with your potential targets? Now,
Right.
probably easier said than done.
Oh
What
yeah.
are some like top three, top five mistakes that you see in communication that small to medium sized businesses are doing when they're trying to do this?
They communicate in their language. So like in the simple, very simple example is if you're so just think about cameras. So people can say, okay, you know what, this is, people talked about pixels and all these other things. To the average consumer, that means absolutely nothing. So it's like, okay, you're going to get quality, high definition, maybe not even use high definition, but quality pictures that you'll be able to continue to share with your family for years and years and years, or whatever it may be. And so it's just kind of flipping it from those technical features or that language that you use into language that your consumers understand.
Right. It's like talking about apertures, talking about exposures, the size of the lens, and those things for someone that maybe, if that is your audience, if it's a,
Right, right. If that, yeah, right.
you're saying if you're going for take out the language that you use internally in
Mhm,
because that's how you're gonna talk with your team. What
mhm.
your customer needs is a different approach. That's when the market research comes into play to understand what is
Right,
their motivators, what drives them. Now,
right, right.
when when you have when you have this breakdown of like, hey guys, I see that there are some problems in the way that you approach your communication. Do you do you encounter situations where um, you need to show and prove that this is a better way of doing it, where the owner of the place is like, no, I've been doing this for 20 years. It worked perfectly.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a lot of times it's a struggle. And it's because once, like you said, they've experienced a level of success doing it their way.
Mhm.
But it's, things have changed and people trying to figure out the right our culture has changed. And so there is a time in which people just kind of, I always try to say this the right way, but people are seeking certain type of information. And so if it's not, some people aren't going to do the research. Some people, there's a lot of researchers. Some people like, okay, I don't understand that. I'm just not going to do it. And so you have to make it make sense to them. And so, so even the process I'm going through with that client, I'm like the same thing applies to your client or your customer. Where I can talk, use all the current marketing lingo for you, but the bottom line is how do I increase sales? How do I increase revenue? That's what you want to know. So how do you communicate that? So it's okay. So instead of me talking about SEO and all the analytics, the bottom line is this is, we're going to identify what your KPIs are and figure out a way to help you achieve them. And so, and even with that, it's just kind of understanding what that process is. And, and there, it's A/B testing. There's different things you can do to show. And so a lot of times it's just kind of it's an educational process.
Educational process, and
Right.
I feel like the communication part is just one component of a bigger picture, which probably will put it under the brand strategy.
Mhm.
what are important elements of a good brand strategy for a small to medium-sized business to apply?
The element is knowing who you are. And it's like you have to have that identity. And so a lot of times I'll go through and say, oh, I'll ask different questions with the key stakeholders. We'll go back sometimes to the actual business plan and say, what did you build this business organization on? What are your core values and principles? That's the foundation of your brand. And so from that, you just try to help you understand that. And a lot of times, like I'll share a story with them. And, my personal story was like growing up, my parents, before we left the house, there were rules of how you're going to conduct yourself. And so, like I said, like literally that became my brand. So how I conduct myself inside the house, outside the house, whatever, that's part of your brand. So as a business, it needs to align. So even with that, you think about there may be someone that you want to do business with, or you may want to partner with, but their core values or principles don't align with yours. So by working with them, you're actually compromising your brand.
Right.
So, so you really just have to help people process it that way. And so it's, and then it makes sense and you just kind of go on that journey at that point.
So it feels like the pieces to the puzzle are coming. So you would say part of your brand strategy is understanding who you are, what are your core values and your principles. Going
Hmm.
back to why did you start this? Why did you start this business? What were the main drivers and motivators? And even
Hmm.
looking at the key decision makers themselves as, like you said, personal values. These are some of your personal values that you bring into the company. Now that is part of the bigger picture. That's part of the branding strategy, and that is a good place to start to be like, okay, what is my brand? I can start moving those pieces, start
Hmm.
putting them on paper and work with that. Then you bring in the communication second part. How do
Right.
I communicate this to my clients? What is the right way of doing it? Of course, doing a lot of A/B testing and seeing
Hmm.
what works. Um, you didn't mention something that a lot of people I feel like they get hung up on. Um, Color, fonts, design, logos. Is
The
that
aesthetics.
important or is that kind of vanity metrics aesthetics?
It's important, but it's not the key. And so, just by nature, we see certain colors and we think certain things, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So you have to be mindful of that. Logos, it's, if someone stares and like, okay, what does that even mean? So that could be a talking point or it could be a distraction. So it's like, it's important, but that foundation, that core, the other things that we spoke about. So you think about, people see, it's like when I was working for this one corporation, it's like, if someone saw yellow, it was okay, it's caution. So if you that's a be mindful when you're in that area. So it's like certain colors mean certain things to you. Red, okay, it's caution. It can mean caution, it can mean other things. So it's like different colors have different values. So you have to figure out how that aligns with what you're trying to do. And some people just throw it all out. You think about years ago, remember Apple,
Yeah.
when they first came out, they had different colors. They eliminated it. So it's just like literally just kind of being mindful of, you know, what it means and does it, impact or does it have a positive, negative effect? Or I just like this color, I like this logo, so this is what we're gonna do.
It's interesting. We do go through trends. Like I remember
Mhm.
GoDaddy. That was a freaky logo. That was all
Yeah.
over the place. Very clean nowadays, very simple. And of course, like
Right.
Samsung kind of brought it down a little bit, but they always had the
Right.
font, if you will. But I do know there are some that were like really out there. Do
Right.
you have, do you bring a strong argument to someone to say you need to rebrand? What would be a good reason to come to someone to say, look, you really need to rebrand?
Some brands are just outdated. Like, just and and like honestly, it's twofold. One, it could be that, and as your company evolves, your brand should evolve. And so there's a lot of business, especially in manufacturing, they've been around for years. And as they transition, it's like, okay, it may be time to rethink that. I think, so you go back to 2020 when the whole world shut down. It's like, since that there's been a lot of changes, how we do business changed. And so how things, there's a lot of changes have come into place since then. And so being mindful of, what, maybe it's time to rethink that brand, because does it still align with who you are, or does it still resonate with your customers or potential customers?
I
So
see.
sometimes you just need to rethink it. Or another scenario is, I had a client that was considering going into a new market.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, based on how it was initially, as you expand into a different market, it didn't quite fit. So how do we adjust so we can capture both?
I see. Have you, um, it's interesting. The reason I asked the rebranding because I feel like it's a subject that some people will never do because they feel it's a waste of time and money and resources, and some really want to do it. Have you been in a conversation where your client sees rebranding as the solution to a problem, and you're trying to show them that's not really it. You shouldn't go with the rebranding. It's something else. But they feel like rebranding is a solution to a problem they have that is something else. Have you had a conversation like that?
I've had a conversation, and it was more, I think the then they still haven't made a decision. It's not even a client, it's someone that we're in negotiation with. But it was honestly a situation in which new management, new structure. Well, I'll just say new upper management, new leadership. And so new leadership, I believe their goal was, okay, how do I put my stamp? How do I put my identity on there? And the conversation was, you have to get an understanding of how that will impact your internal and external stakeholders. So your employees, as well as your potential clients.
Hmm.
And in the midst of it, it was, okay, you know what, you might want to consider doing some research of internal and external stakeholders to see what that impact would be. And so it wasn't that I said no, but it was just kind of, let's think this through.
So talk to the stakeholders, see, and that can be employees and that can be clients or some
Mhm.
market research to understand you doing this rebrand, what will that do? How will that look
Right,
like? Is it a positive? Is it a neutral? Is it a
right,
negative? Or making
right,
that decision?
right.
It's interesting. I never thought of reaching out to everyone to, if that's a good way of
Yeah.
reaching out to key stakeholders to see if rebranding
Yeah.
is important for
You're
some.
not going to talk to everyone, but just kind of like,
A
yeah,
sample.
yeah, just a sample, just to get an idea, because, yeah, you may be thinking of something, you may be overthinking something.
You might be overthinking. We do that quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all, the goal is we're trying to get to that next level, and sometimes we get stuck in where we are. So there's nothing wrong with thinking about it, but, let's think it through. Let's not, you know, make a decision based on, two or three opinions.
Right. So we're at a point we have a good branding strategy or the key concepts of a good branding strategy. We're bringing them together. We've decided not to rebrand. We're going to stick with this one. It's good. It's working. You don't want to, solve a problem with rebranding because you have something else that you feel like it's not helping you get to the next level. Usually,
Mhm.
the first thing that people would do, it would be marketing strategies. And marketing strategy is a very broad, at least my opinion, very broad term. There's a lot that goes into that loaded one sentence marketing strategy. What we do with marketing strategies. Um,
Mhm.
what are the first steps that someone needs to do if they want to start some sort of a marketing strategy? What are the first steps you really need to do? Then we can look at other stuff.
Mhm. So I do two things. One, know who your target audience is. And so just kind of establish who that ideal customers are, what they look like, what motivates them,
Mhm.
uh, where they are, how do they shop, all those things. So it's kind of get an understanding of who they are, and see. And I think the other part that people miss, it has to connect with your brand. So you have, once again, that's where that brand strategy and marketing strategy connects, is, okay, this is who we are. based on who we are, who do we want to reach, and what makes sense, and how do we reach them. So those are the first things I do.
It feels like a what's it called, like a avatar. You're building some sort of a avatar
Right.
for your
Yep.
ICP, and you're going through that
Right.
process.
Right. Yep.
Um, if you're going through that process, what are the main questions you need to ask yourself in order to write that? How detailed should you go?
So different companies, it varies. So it's, so for example, you have to understand who that decision maker is. And so trying to figure out how you have to identify who that. So you're creating these personas or avatars, as you
Yeah.
said, and you may have several of them, and to figure out which ones, and you might want to prioritize them and just create that plan for that. And for me, it varies in manufacturing. It could be, it takes that goes back to the research part. So if you, especially now with like LinkedIn, with social media, you can find out a lot about a company, and so or just who you're targeting, or just and so identifying within an organization if the CEO may not be that true decision maker. You have to figure out who that gatekeeper is. So you have to go through those things and understand that if it's a CFO who's the decision maker, that person's, they're looking at bottom line dollars. Like, so you have to be mindful of that. If it's the operations person that, okay, now it's like, okay, how do you communicate in a way they're looking for efficiency? So just understanding who, what those things are and what motivates their buying decision. And so it's like, just kind of creating those. And a lot of times it's we'll create multiple ones because especially in, if when it comes to like networking, when I'm working with my clients, I'm training them like literally you're listening for keywords. So you have like all these avatars in your mind, and so you hear someone say, "I'm the CFO," and then you like kind of like scroll through to that avatar and start having the conversation based on that, right? And so I think, and so that's how I kind of, and it can be overwhelming, but I'm like, okay, you don't have to know all the talking points. It's like, you ask a couple questions about, what their pain points are, and they're going to communicate it, and then you just kind of go from there. And like a lot of times, I'm like, if you ask the right question, as you're doing, like you ask the right question, you'll get people to talk. So that's all you're doing. You're just, processing information, and then you're going back to the lab. Okay, how do we tweak this message?
And when it comes to, it's interesting how you said those things and became natural to you. You said CFO looks for the bottom line, CEO operations look for efficiencies. A lot
Right.
of people will overthink it. They were like, "Oh, I'm looking for this." But at the end of the day, it's absolutely true. Someone that is in operations, they need to have a smooth um, process for everything. Everything needs to tick along just fine, deliver on time, and that's where they just keep looking for efficiencies and optimizing
Right.
processes. Where a
Right.
CFO, their main job is to the bottom line. How much more can the company profit? How much do we spend on this one? What are the balancing sheets and stuff like that? And therefore, your avatar is not just where they go, what they do, where they spend the most time on, what the podcast they're listening to. It's now becomes, well, a key factor of what they do 24/7
Right. Yep.
is basically a part of their big identity.
Hmm.
And when you have multiple ones, do you look for that structure? I think I read it somewhere like a P1, P2, P3. Like this is my main one, this is the second one, this is the third one. Or it's more like these are three, they're just different, but they're all in the same level in terms of who's your right persona you will reach out.
I usually have a few different ones, and it just, because you don't you you don't want to miss an opportunity. So if you have like this, it's so if you're at, at an event, like I said, you're going to hear these certain keywords, and this you try to kind of, tweak it to that. But once again, it's, how, I try to keep it as simple as possible. And because like a lot of times, and the reality of it is, as a business owner, a lot of times, you're in this business because either you have a passion for this, or you may have inherited it, but you know this industry, or this market, or this thing very well. you may not know how to market it. So it's just like, how do I simplify that for you so it's not so that it becomes natural?
Mhm.
And so that's where, once again, it's kind of getting rid of the buzzwords. A lot of times, I've had people say, okay, are you really a marketing person? You don't use all these, those terms. I'm like, I can use them, but will you understand what I'm talking about? Now, if you can, okay, we can have that conversation, but make it as simple as possible, so.
Simplicity is key. Is the hardest thing to achieve. Otherwise, we
Right.
won't be doing it. We have a good understanding of the marketing strategy and how that is working. We have some personas that we will work with when we start to execute. Basically, digital marketing is probably like the one that is the most efficient one.
Mhm.
The one that you can have the most metrics around and KPIs and track it properly. When we talk about digital marketing, um, there is a couple of components to it in most businesses, I feel like. Um, do you start with a specific one, or you look at it at what will make the most sense for the company and you start from there? Or do you have like this is the baseline, you should always start with have a solid strategy for this digital outlet?
I as far as uh, everything is custom because you have to once I understand your company and your target customers, that answers those other questions. So you think about like luxury car dealerships, luxury car manufacturers.
Mhm.
The higher level they are, the less commercials you see on them, or it's less social media because that's not how they go to market. So they target they're very specific on how they reach out to their audience, and so you can't, it's not cookie cutter. So it's literally, okay, if this is who you're trying to reach,
Mhm.
these are the platforms you should use, and these are the words, this is the communication. So it starts with understanding that. So everything, like, you can't cut, I mean, it's not cookie cutter, and like a lot of times, there's failure. I've had, I had a conversation with someone. I have this conversation often, honestly, where people will say, okay, well, my social media is not working. I'm on, I'm on Facebook. I post on Facebook and Instagram all the time, and no one replies or whatever. And I was just like, okay, are your customers on there? Is your potential clients on there? And it's like, well, I was told, okay. And it's like, okay, well, that's where the strategy comes in, like literally understanding where your clients or customers are, and building around that.
And when we look at social media as a place that is definitely part of every digital marketing
Mhm.
strategy,
Mhm.
um, how has content changed now that we have so much access to AI to make it uniquely ours, in line with the brand, and not fall into the noise of generic kind of stuff created?
Mhm. That's where, like, literally understanding who your customers are, figuring out how to reach them, and what captures their eye. And it's a lot of times, like for example, just in the last, I mean, it's been trending, but video is way more impactful than, like, stills or whatever. Just kind of, you can post pics, or you can post, infographics and things like that. But a lot of times, just in the culture, it's podcasts like you're doing. It's a little video clips, it's reels, it's all these other things that capture, stories. All these things are capturing people more attention now. So that's something that's changed. But then with AI, I think that it's you still have to do your work. It's like, sometimes people, I think that, it's, wife and I was having this conversation the other day, like literally, like, technology helps and hinders us sometimes. So
Mhm.
we have to learn how to use it. It's like almost like the superpower. We have to learn how to use technology for good, right?
Yeah.
And so AI helps, but it's just like, okay, well, how do you, how do you leverage it to get the most out of it? There's some people that they're just like, I don't have to write anything now. I just, type this in and, and he gives me this output and I send it. I'm like, okay, So, I mean, so, training AI, going through these processes is very helpful, but it's just being mindful of how is it really working and knowing how to make it work for you. I just,
Right. It's more of spending a lot of time making it understand and learn from you and your brand and kind of feeding
right,
that constantly as opposed to a very short prompt and this is
right,
fantastic and just kind of run with it. And I know
exactly.
exactly what you mean because my wife has a nail business. She does nails. Uh,
Mm,
and she was like, I want to do like a quick post on this Facebook group. I'm like, cool, no problem. I opened AI and I said, okay, this is my business. This is my website. This is what I do. Would love to reach out to moms in my geographical area, Oakville, Ontario, Canada.
mm,
Boom, it pops up. She's like, I was like, this is insane. He just wrote it in like a couple of seconds. And even
right,
with like voice prompts. I
right,
was like, yes, it's a good structure. But now if we look at the details, there's nothing here that it says specific about it. It's a generic code that it created. There's a
right,
generic 20% offer. It didn't give it the name. There's nothing specific about
right.
um outside of mentioning the geographical location and what I said, moms in geographical location.
Mm,
Um, I feel like it's a tool that you can start um kind of testing with it to start
right,
from
right.
somewhere. Before you would look at a blank screen or you look at templates. We did that for many years. Try to
Exactly,
find templates as a
exactly.
starting point. Now, when it comes to videos, I think videos are a lot more impactful for sure because I think that technology and accessibility can just make the video. The phones are so good; you can just make the video. Audio is really nice.
Right.
Um, how do you go about um, creating a solid strategy with someone from a company that doesn't want to be the face of the company? Like, don't want to be on videos, don't want to do that. Make a great digital marketing strategy.
That's a sore subject for me right now. Because it's hard. That's been a lesson learned. Like now, as I'm creating a strategy, that's a conversation that I have to have now. It's like, okay, if if it's not going to be you, then who? And so it's like literally how do you communicate it? Because we're in a culture in which with so much competition, you have to differentiate yourself. And so it could be you just, a walk through your plant or your facility. It could be, just you just talking to one, like something as simple. I'm not going to say it's simple because it's, for some people, it's really hard to do. I struggle with that as well. But just trying to figure out how to get them, so it may be, just a walk through your facility, so just kind of so people can see or see you and interacting with your employees, like something that's not may not even be specifically business related can have such an impact. And so just understand, so that is a battle I've had with several clients, and there's some that I couldn't work with because I'm like, oh, this is only going to work if people see you. I have a really great example. I can't use that one, but it was, it's just certain situations. If you're offering a service, people need to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me it was a limiting belief. For the longest time, I didn't want to do anything. I was like, it doesn't matter who I am. Like, it doesn't matter what I do. It just matters the service that we deliver and the reviews that we're getting and stuff like that. And I just didn't want to do it because it was a limiting belief. Like, I'm not like that guy. I'm not one of those. We're gonna walk
Right, right.
and it's nothing to do like that. It's not at all. It's what you
Right.
mentioned, like walking through a plant. And I have a even more interesting example where the other day as I was scrolling through, I think I was on TikTok, and then one guy pops up and he owns a private jet company. And there's someone just recording his conversations, and the conversations are so ridiculous because these are private jets, right? So the stories that he's listening, and you can listen to the conversations, you're like, you want to pay 50,000 for your dog to be transferred from, I don't know, LAX to New York, and then I don't, and that's it. I know who the guy is. I know what they do, and it's
Mhm.
just entertaining now. It's
Right,
nothing to do with pitching, nothing to do with imposter syndrome. Literally, the guy just records this conversation, and because they're
right,
so crazy and ridiculous, in the same example you gave, walking through the plant, there's so many things you can do. You don't need to have that like, this is who I am, this is what we do. I'm an expert. Here's a whiteboard.
right.
Doesn't need to be like that.
Yeah.
Now, if someone um, is going through the process and they're putting the pieces to the puzzle, but they don't want to do it on their own, or they feel like I want to have someone that is part of the team, but you know, high level expert I can't really afford right now. Fractional CMO is when it's kind of like a that match made in heaven, if you will. What are the
Mhm.
things? What are the things that business owners have to look at, or we'll go over that later, like red flags, but like what are the first important things that businesses need to look at or questions they need to ask when they're talking with someone and they're considering them to be a fractional CMO for their business?
They need to understand who that just this strengths, because you think about, once again, you have so many um when it comes, there's so much competition in every industry. So you have to figure out what is the best fit for you. Someone that can understand what your pain points are and has the experience or understanding of what you need, and show proof that they can provide, achieve those goals and help you guide through those goals. And it's, once again, that's another one that I have I have a structure, but success comes from kind of being creative and understanding what's going to work. It's, for that organization. But
Okay.
it's, once again, it's kind of really understanding, is there a fit? It's just, I mean, because the reality of it is you're hiring someone, me, you're hiring a fractional CMO to represent you. It's, that person for, 9 months or more is your marketing, you know, officer. So how do it has to be a fit.
You mentioned three things, and the final one was the I feel like the most important one that people might be scared of doing, which was you mentioned understanding their strengths, the CMO
Mhm.
strengths. Would it be a fit? Conversations, plan, strategy can be
Mhm.
very clear with that. And the final thing you mentioned was show proof. How how does a business ask to see proof from a fractional CMO without coming across as I want you to do free work for me?
Mhm. So it's that's tricky, because I've come across that a lot of times. I rely on my referrals. Like, literally, it's okay. You can talk to. I've worked with this company, and a lot of times it's trying to find a company, not in the same industry but similar.
Mhm.
Because of course, you're not going to say, okay, there's, so you have to be, so you have to just be mindful of that. That's just, so, you don't want something else that could be created of, thinking, trade ideas or anything like that. There's, non-disclosures, things like that. So you have to be mindful of that. But just going through the process of making sure that, this is the success that I experienced with them. You can talk to them, you can hear from their words, their experience. That's the best way, because, you know, it's hard to actually show other proof. You can show case studies, but those are words. But literally hearing from someone that you've worked with is, to me, the best way.
The best way. And you're saying it's all right to show similar companies, similar industries. Doesn't have to be necessarily the identical one because then you do have
Right,
that conflict that you always have to be mindful of. Now,
right.
when
Because it's usually the pain point. If you think about it, is if this customer, I mean, this client hired me to do this because this was the problem. So a lot of times, if I hear someone and this is their pain point, okay, you definitely need, here's an example of it.
now, if someone decides, I'm going to bring in a fractional CMO, what are their expectations? What can they realistically expect the fractional CMO to do? Where are those, I would say, boundaries at one point? Because marketing and sales overlap very often.
Mm-hmm.
What are the realistic expectations? You brought in a fractional CMO. This is kind of what you can expect day-to-day activities
Mm-hmm.
for a fractional CMO in your business.
Okay. So it is you've identified what the goal is. You've identified this, you need a marketing strategy or a brand strategy or both. Um, so you've identified what those key goals, business goals are. So that fractional CMO should create a strategy that aligns with those business goals, create a plan to achieve those goals. It could be if you have a marketing staff that maybe lack certain level of experience, that CMO, fractional CMO could actually create, do not training, but kind of guide them through the steps. But once again, it's a, chief marketing officer. So it's helping your marketing team achieve the goals. It could be helping you hire the right people to do, to execute it. So it's just all those things, just kind of creating those things to create the strategy, help with the implementation, and then oversee, when there should be whether it's weekly, bi-weekly meetings showing the progress. These are things we're working on. The thing that I'm, I focus on is there has to be a plan and a timeline in place, because both of us have to be held accountable. If I say I'm going to help you achieve this, we need to have checkpoints in which, okay, you did your part, I did my part, here we are. We have to see that.
Got it. It's good how you were mentioning it in a kind of like a natural tone throughout the whole, as you were listing those, that hitting the targets, hitting the targets. So it sounds like there has to be well-defined KPIs at
Right,
the beginning
right,
that you
right,
will then do the marketing strategy, branding strategy, create the plan. But also it is to be expected to a degree that because you are the CMO, you can elevate the existing team, help them to be better so that not just hiring people. It's not always a solution. I'm just going to hire more people, but you have a
right,
team. I can help them elevate and get better
right.
so that you have more skilled marketing team, that more creative marketing, whatever that looks like. So, and it's always having very clear KPIs, having a timeline about those KPIs. And, me being here and doing all these things, I will talk with your team day to day. I will try to elevate them and get them to be a lot
Mm-hmm.
better.
Right.
You know?
And the tools. The other part is the tools. Sometimes they don't have the right tools in place, or they have, so I do an evaluation of the marketing tools that they're using, because we also find out that sometimes they're underutilizing tools.
Mhm.
So they have multiple tools doing a lot of different things. So it's like, okay, you know what? Let's get you the right tools in place so that now it's more automated or whatever it may be.
Yes. And I think, and sometimes there's like industry specific ones that they do
Mhm.
stuff and they will just say, we just don't use that. We have MailChimp. Like, well, you
Right,
have it already there. Yeah, it's more efficient. Now,
right.
um, Byron, if someone wants to get a hold of you and wants to talk with you and work with you, what is the best way for someone to do that?
So my website is DanonConsulting.com. I should have put it on there, but I did not on this one. But you can put it in the no, so DanonConsulting.com. You go to my website, I actually do a free consultation for my prospects. Because honestly, things go both ways. So there has to be a good fit for everyone so that we can both experience success. So just so DanonConsulting.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well, DanonConsulting.com as well. You reach out to me either way. And yeah.
Fantastic, Byron. Thank you so much for the time. This was very detailed. I learned a lot of new stuff, especially when it comes to how to build that persona and the CFO, CMO right away, understanding what their pain points are and
Right.
how to go about those things, and especially the expectations of a fractional CMO. I think a lot of people have heard of those things, but you
Mhm.
kind of painted a very clear picture of what you can expect to get out of that. And I do
Right.
hope people go to your website, at least have a conversation with you and
Right.
see if you can experience success together. So thank you again for the time and all the best in your future.